Hi, welcome to On Air. I'm Klara Syrewicz. Soft power, a term as vague as a politician's promise. Yet most analysts agree that the West's je ne sais quoi of global influence has faded, and a new player is stepping into the spotlight. Later in our report, we look at something compounding that trend, the gutting of USAID. We're no longer basking in the afterglow of Fukuyama's end of history, where Western values, culture and governance models were the pinnacle of global aspirations. The US, once the mightiest soft power engine, is losing steam at an alarming rate, while Europe, not that from within, has few rousing visions to offer. Enter China, all in red, wielding a potent cocktail of cultural charm, economic incentives, and many less savory tactics. Welcome to the multipolar world, as presented to you by Beijing. Let's start with economic soft power. China routinely claims it never interferes in the internal affairs of other countries. Behold that non-involvement in the war in Ukraine. Yet still, it performs a lot of outright interference, sometimes disguised as aid, sometimes not so much. In a previous episode, we talked about China's flagship development program, the Belt and Road Initiative. Despite its dainty propaganda, this tool of China's soft power is surprisingly blunt and often masks military outposts, espionage and debt trap diplomacy. For instance, China has tightened its grip on its economic corridor in Myanmar and recently pressured the Pakistani government to install an internet censorship system similar to its own Great Firewall, clearly to protect another economic corridor, which harbours a port/navy base, and keep it hidden from nosy journalists, or basically anyone with a cell phone. In recent years, China also significantly increased its global humanitarian aid, a classic soft power tool. This effort was largely driven by COVID-19 for a number of reasons, some noble, others not so much. China's reputation took a major hit during the pandemic. First, for hiding the initial outbreak, which accelerated its global spread. Then for showcasing its authoritarianism by imposing the world's harshest lockdowns. And finally, for putting national pride ahead of saving lives when it rejected foreign vaccines, despite its own proving less effective. These episodes greatly tarnished China's global image, and the unprecedented levels of energy and money poured into rebuilding it are testament to that. In its damage control, China zeroed in on Africa and Latin America, where the pandemic, food crises, and Western donors burdened with the war in Ukraine left a vacuum Beijing eagerly filled. Cynical or not, this was a welcome relief for many nations. In Africa, China launched its Health Silk Road, boosting medical logistics and local vaccine production. It provided emergency aid during East Africa's hunger crisis, notably worsened by China's friend Russia blocking Ukraine's grain exports. But that's a side note. According to Chinese propagandists, Beijing's goal is to tell its story well. That of a great country sharing its success with others, a story brilliantly masking both its recklessness and ruthlessness. With USAID now gutted, that tale will be etched in stone. Like it or not, stories construe reality and have mighty consequences. As historian and author Anne Applebaum notes, a real war of ideas is underway, exemplified by a leaked document from top Chinese ideologues.
The document famously describes a set of perils to the Chinese Communist Party. What are the things that are most dangerous to the Chinese Communist Party? And number one was Western constitutional democracy. So the idea of Western constitutions, the idea that people should have choice, the idea that people should have rights, the idea that there should be a legal system that's separate from the will of the Chinese Communist Party. This is the thing that the Chinese Communist Party decided was most threatening to their form of government.
So not military might, not economic coercion, not even plummeting demographics. Ideas. Western soft power, as defined by Joseph Nye, centers on the global appeal of democratic values, cultural exports like film or music, and public diplomacy. Historically unable to compete in those arenas, China turned to alternative methods of influence that the West is now clearly incapable of emulating or eradicating. Far beyond cuddly pandas and graceful calligraphy, China's version of cultural diplomacy is more politically charged, focusing on creating inside-out parallel worlds, alternative networks and forums designed to encircle, undermine, and potentially replace Western-led systems. It achieves this through regional platforms it has created or shaped, like the China Community of Latin American and Caribbean States Forum or the China Arab States Cooperation Forum. Key to their success is China's refusal to apply a one-size-fits-all diplomacy. Unlike Western powers, which rely on established institutions and universal values, China tailors its approach to local flavors, regardless of corruption, repression, or human rights violations. Similarly, Beijing adapts its propaganda to the interests of specific audiences. The party's communication seeks one key, a targeted message, for each lock and audience to be influenced. China's digital platforms, from shopping apps like Temu to TikTok, Douyin, and WeChat, showcase Chinese lifestyles to younger audiences, but also allow the CCP to collect vast amounts of data on users, aided by algorithms crafted with built-in surveillance and the explicit aim of being addictive. TikTok's recent $600 million fine highlights the massive exfiltration of user data to China. It also underscores the importance of resisting US-led efforts to water down EU data privacy laws or reduce the accountability of social media platforms, as these regulations protect against China's influence operations. Ironically, this should align with US security interests, but sadly doesn't. The global decline of democracy's appeal, even within democratic nations, isn't helping. A study by political scientists from Harvard, Yale, and the University of Groningen surveyed 6,000 people from 19 countries. Participants were divided into 4 groups, shown Chinese, American, or both countries' messages. The 4th was a control group. By the end, among those who viewed Chinese media, a majority preferred its government model over America's. American propaganda had a smaller impact on its recipients. And in the mixed group, people leaned towards China. Just look at that video, so exciting, it makes me want to forfeit my basic rights and spy on work colleagues. Add to that an army of state-backed Western influencers, journalists, and bloggers. While Beijing has ramped up surveillance, encouraged locals to treat foreigners as potential spies, and arrested journalists, it points to travel videos from Westerners as proof that such criticisms are exaggerated. As the New York Times uncovered, those influencers are usually remunerated or travel on all expenses paid useful idiot trips. But this influence machine isn't just driven by centralized institutions. China also fosters a unique entrepreneurial spirit, for instance, in its hacking ecosystem. Unlike in the West, where private companies are hired by government agencies, Chinese hackers often hack first and sell later, trying to anticipate what the Ministry of Security wants. China's intelligence collection also differs from the West's in that it's not just spies doing the spying, it's an army of ordinary citizens. State security laws force everyone to watch and report. Even Chinese dual nationals living abroad or diaspora communities are pressured to promote party messages, inform on others, or stay quiet, often under blackmail or threats to family back home. This is soft power, but with the razor hidden inside. As former CIA and Defense Intelligence Agency officer Nicholas Eftimiadis puts it,
they are leveraging an entire society, and their state-owned enterprises, numbering around 150,000, are literally tasked by the party to collect information and to influence foreign governments.
Because of the sheer scale of China's surveillance, some US states are multiplying measures blocking Chinese diaspora members from buying land or property. Actions driven by real concerns, but offering discriminatory solutions. Those further sap America's credibility as an open, rules-based society where everyone has equal rights, something China is all too eager to exploit. Just look at that headline. You know it's Chinese propaganda when the word imperialism already figures in the title. And now for the cherry on top. The US trade war has handed China an international halo. Riding this wave, Beijing has scored major wins in Southeast Asia and is well positioned to charm more African nations battered by tariffs and abandoned by Western health or development aid. China is even romancing the UK and Canada, claiming, as Foreign Minister Wang Yi nobly puts it, to uphold the post-World War II order, at least with regards to tariffs. But coming from Beijing, that's a very rich claim. Multipolarity, as invoked by Xi Jinping or Vladimir Putin, doesn't simply acknowledge the existence of multiple power centers, but signals an alternative vision of the post-World War II order, one where principles like border integrity or the rules of war are no longer guaranteed. In this world, in this club, if you're big enough, you can do what was once deemed unacceptable, execute POWs or abduct 20,000 children, as Russia did in Ukraine. And that will be fine. We'll invite you in. But Xi and Putin are early champions of what Donald Trump now pushes as America's new harder-edged power. Don't look for ideologically led alliances, only raw self-interest. If ideology mattered, countries like Hungary or Italy would enjoy special favors with the US. But as a matter of fact, they don't. While China and even Russia still try to wrap their interests in shiny packaging to make them more palatable, the US no longer seems to care if you admire it or believe in its good intentions, because it's no longer trying to sell ideas, just deals. When the US unplugged USAID in the name of cost-cutting, it didn't just slash aid. It crippled its own influence and very likely its own security. As life-saving programs vanish, America's moral high ground erodes, and China strolls in with a grin and a checkbook.
For 60 years, USAID had been the backbone of humanitarian aid. Since its establishment by John F. Kennedy, it was also a critical tool for US diplomatic outreach and a symbol of American soft power.
USAID, run by radical lunatics, and we're getting them out, and then we'll make a decision.
The decision, part of Doge's broader America First agenda, questioned whether the United States should continue as the world's largest donor of global health assistance, a role that accounts for nearly 1/4 of all international health funding. While upholding this position takes up less than 1% of the US federal budget, the investment has shown consistent public health gains. Just over the past decade, HIV deaths dropped by 51%. An even more staggering statistic comes from a study led by researchers from Avenir Health, a global health organization, which suggests suspending the program will lead to approximately 15 million additional deaths from AIDS by 2040. In Afghanistan, nearly 1/4 of the population no longer receives US-funded healthcare. The World Food Programme, once largely funded by US support, has shut down operations in South Africa,
no water,
where 27 million people face hunger amid the worst droughts in decades. Thanks to US aid, deaths attributed to tuberculosis dropped by 23% over the last decade. Now, doctors warn that cuts could pave the way for new, treatment-resistant strains of the disease. Meanwhile, the administration insists the most critical programs will continue. But which ones? How long? And at what scale? Nobody seems to know. In the background, lawsuits are mounting.
The Pentagon budget is where the defense contractor Elon Musk, who became the richest man in the world off of our money, he collects his payments from, and now he's trying to shut down US aid. We're not going to allow this to happen. It will not stand.
Democrats say Trump can't legally dismantle a congressionally funded agency. But the legal system moves slowly, and aid, unfortunately, can't wait. Besides the humanitarian toll, this abrupt rollback of US presence may open the door for significant security risks, from shrinking diplomatic leverage to a loss of control in volatile regions. As retired Lieutenant General Ben Hodges puts it, it is easier and cheaper to fight Ebola in an isolated area of Africa than to wait until it turns into a pandemic in America.
Turns out soft power abhors a vacuum. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next week.